Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is disappearing from a man's world without a single ounce of drama. Because when you remove your presence, you remove his comfort, and that's exactly when regret starts to grow. This isn't about hurting him, it's about finally choosing your peace. Your absence speaks louder than any explanation because absence removes the noise, the excuses, and the debates that usually follow when emotions are high. When you're still present in someone's life, even a little, they can lean on the comfort of knowing you're there. They can rationalize their behavior, minimize your pain, or tell themselves they'll fix things later. But when you step away completely, you remove the possibility of later. You create a vacuum. And in that vacuum, clarity rushes in. People don't realize what your presence does for them until they no longer have access to it. When you're around, they feel safe, they feel supported, they feel chosen, but because those things are constant, they get taken for granted. They tell themselves you'll always be available, always forgiving, always understanding. So when you pull back, it disrupts that belief. Suddenly, your absence forces them to deal with the reality of their actions without your emotional labor softening the impact. The interesting thing about silence is that it removes their ability to defend themselves. When you try to explain why you're hurt, they might argue, deflect, or tell you you're overreacting. They might convince themselves that you're just being emotional, but silence has no argument. Silence is a mirror. It reflects their behavior back to them without you saying a single word. And that mirror is often harsher than anything you could ever say out loud, because it comes from within them, not from you. Your silence also shows that you're no longer trying to fix or negotiate. It shows that you value your peace over proving a point. That's a power most people don't expect. They expect you to stay and fight for them. They expect you to explain yourself over and over, hoping they'll suddenly understand your worth. But walking away skips all of that. It tells them you've already understood your worth, and that's why you left. What makes your absence so powerful is that it shifts the emotional dynamic completely. When you were available, they didn't have to feel the consequences of their choices. They could ignore, postpone, or downplay things because you were still showing up. The moment you stop showing up, the consequences land. They feel the silence, they feel the gap, they feel the absence of the energy you brought, the kindness, the support, the effort, the emotional presence they didn't realize they depended on. And that's the moment regret begins, not because you're trying to make them regret, but because regret is a natural human response to losing something meaningful. Especially when the loss wasn't noisy, dramatic, or chaotic. Drama gives people a reason to blame you. Silence gives them no escape. They can't say you were crazy, emotional, or difficult. They're left with the reality that you walked away because they didn't show up in the way you deserved. When you disappear, it forces them to confront a truth they avoided, that your presence was a gift, not a guarantee. They start replaying memories differently. Moments where they were dismissive suddenly feel heavy. Times they ignored your needs now feel selfish. Situations where they thought you'd wait forever begin to haunt them because now there's no version of the story where you're still waiting. People underestimate the emotional impact of someone strong enough to leave quietly. It hits deeper than yelling, deeper than tears, deeper than trying to make them understand. Your silence becomes the explanation. Your absence becomes the lesson. And long after you've moved forward, they're left dealing with the echo of everything they didn't appreciate when they had the chance. Not announcing your exit and simply upgrading your standards is one of the most powerful shifts you can make because it moves the focus from him to you. When you stop performing, stop explaining, and stop trying to make someone understand your worth, you reclaim a kind of emotional authority that instantly changes the dynamic. People often think power is in the big speech, the dramatic goodbye, the perfectly crafted message that finally makes someone see what they've lost. But real power comes from walking away without asking to be seen at all. It comes from realizing that your value doesn't need a presentation. It reveals itself when you stop offering it where it's not appreciated. The quiet exit is so impactful because it shows emotional clarity. When you explain your boundaries over and over, it creates the illusion that your boundaries are flexible. It sends the message that if they just give you a little emotional reassurance or temporary improvement, you'll stay. But when you leave without announcing it, you're essentially saying, "My standards aren't up for negotiation," and that's where everything shifts. You move from trying to teach someone how to love you to understanding that the right person won't need lessons. They'll naturally rise to meet your level. People underestimate the strength it takes to upgrade your standards quietly. It means you've stopped trying to change someone. You've stopped waiting for potential. You've stopped rewarding inconsistency. Instead, you're investing in the version of yourself who knows she deserves more. And when you begin behaving like a woman who knows her value, not just saying it, but embodying it, everything around you recalibrates. You naturally move away from people who offer the bare minimum, and you naturally gravitate toward behaviors, habits, and environments that support your growth and peace. What makes this move so psychologically powerful for him is the absence of closure. When you don't announce your departure, he doesn't get the chance to argue his case, manipulate the story, or give you a breadcrumb of affection to keep you hooked. People rely on your desire for closure to keep you emotionally tied. They expect you to express your disappointment because your disappointment gives them control. If you're explaining, you're still engaged. If you're defending your needs, you're still emotionally invested. If you're trying to be understood, you're still there. But when you walk away quietly, you cut that emotional cord completely. You don't ask for closure, you create it. You don't give them a chance to respond. You make their response irrelevant. That's why the quiet exit creates regret so often, not because you're trying to cause regret, but because it removes the illusion of control they thought they had. They realized too late that you weren't waiting for them to change. You were evaluating whether they were capable of meeting your standards. And once the answer became clear, you simply moved on. Upgrading your standards also means upgrading your behavior. You no longer chase, you no longer over-explain, you no longer settle for someone who gives you attention but not effort, interest but not commitment, presence but not consistency. As your standards rise, your tolerance for emotional crumbs disappears. You begin making decisions from self-respect, not fear. You stop clinging to what feels familiar and start choosing what feels healthy. That inner shift is what creates outer distance, not spite, but growth. The beauty of not announcing your eggs, it is that it communicates what words never could, that you're no longer operating from a place of needing them. You're operating from a place of choosing yourself, and the moment you choose yourself fully, the power dynamic flips. The person who once took you for granted now has to face the reality that you don't need to be convinced to stay. You're already gone. And in that silence, in that absence, in that quiet upgrade of your standards, they finally realize what they lost, not because you told them, but because you stopped giving them access to the version of you they never deserved. A man only misses what he can no longer access, and this truth becomes crystal clear the moment you remove yourself from his life. When you're still emotionally available, even in small ways, he never has to fully feel the impact of his choices. He knows you'll answer eventually. He knows you'll forgive eventually. He knows you're still orbiting his world even if you've pulled back a little. That safety net keeps him comfortable. It keeps him from ever truly confronting what it would mean to lose you. But when you disappear fully, cleanly, and without giving him a version of you he can still reach, that's when everything changes. Suddenly, the woman he assumed would always be there is no longer reachable, and the comfort he depended on turns into a void he can't ignore. Access isn't just about seeing you or talking to you, it's about emotional availability. When you stop giving him reassurance, attention, softness, or emotional labor, he loses something far deeper than your presence. He loses the emotional home he built on your consistency, and this is where regret begins. Because regret doesn't come from losing someone randomly, it comes from losing someone you thought you had more time with. Men often delay effort, thinking they'll get around to showing up later. They think the connection is strong enough that you won't walk away. But you leaving proves the opposite. It proves the connection wasn't as unbreakable as he assumed, and that realization hits hard. The reason missing you becomes so intense once you're fully gone is that he no longer gets the micro reminders of your presence that kept him emotionally satisfied. When you're gone, he isn't seeing your name pop up. He isn't getting your good morning messages. He isn't feeling your support on bad days. He isn't hearing your laugh or relying on your patience. All the small emotional anchors he took for granted disappear, and humans always underestimate the value of something that's consistent. It's only when that consistency evaporates that the brain begins to crave it, replay it, and long for it. Once he loses access, he finally has to sit with his own choices. He can't tell himself he'll fix things later. Later is gone. He can't convince himself that you'll always be understanding. You're no longer there to understand. He can't rely on the comfort of knowing he can reach out when he feels lonely. Your silence forces him to feel that loneliness directly. And loneliness is often what triggers regret, especially in someone who thought your presence was guaranteed. When someone still has access to you, they feel safe enough to be complacent. They don't feel the urgency to improve or show up. But once access is removed, urgency replaces comfort. He starts imagining you moving on, talking to someone else, living your life without thinking about him the way he once assumed you would forever. That fear, the fear of being replaced, is one of the biggest catalysts for regret. It forces him to confront the truth he avoided. You had options, and you finally realized he wasn't the one choosing you fully. What makes losing access so painful is that it creates a permanent shift. Even if he reaches out later, he can feel the change in your energy. You're not the same version of you he remembers, because the version he knew improved the moment she walked away. And that creates a kind of emotional distance he can't undo. He can't access the old you, the forgiving you, the patient you. He begins missing not just your presence, but the peace and stability you brought into his life. And ironically, the moment he realizes how valuable that was is the same moment he no longer gets it. In the end, missing you happens not because you punished him or tried to make him regret anything. It happens because you took away the thing he relied on the most, your emotional access. And once a man realizes he can't reach the woman he once casually leaned on, that's when regret settles in, not temporarily, but in a way that lingers every time he remembers what he lost. Your peace is the punishment his ego never expected, because ego thrives on chaos, reaction, and control. It craves drama because drama allows it to assert dominance, to feel needed, to manipulate emotions, and to maintain a sense of importance. When you react to his actions, argue, beg for recognition, or make your worth dependent on his validation, you're feeding his ego. You're giving him a stage where he can shine, control, and win, even if he's wrong. But the moment you step away, the moment you stop reacting, the moment you make your peace your priority instead of his acknowledgement, you remove the stage entirely. And ego, which relies on external feedback to feel powerful, suddenly finds itself powerless. Most men are conditioned to think that if a woman leaves, there will be emotional fireworks, anger, tears, confrontation, explanations. That's the narrative they expect, the closure they think they'll get, but when you leave quietly, calmly, without drama, it's confusing. Ego doesn't know how to process it. There's no way to assert superiority because you're not giving it any openings. You're not proving a point, you're not explaining yourself, you're simply existing in your own space, valuing your own life. That unexpected silence, that unwavering calm, is like a mirror to the ego, reflecting all its inadequacies and failures in a way that nothing else could. And that's where regret starts to seep in. Your peace becomes a punishment because it forces him to confront what he can no longer control. Ego thrives on manipulation, on emotional leverage, and on the illusion of influence over another person's feelings. The moment you disengage and make yourself unavailable emotionally, he realizes he no longer has any hold over you. He can't provoke a reaction, he can't guilt you, he can't make you justify yourself, and he can't rewrite the narrative of your worth to suit his comfort. That's terrifying for an ego that expected to dominate. And this is precisely why your calm, composed departure is so effective. It's a punishment without aggression, a consequence without confrontation, and a message that speaks louder than words ever could. Peace as punishment also works because it highlights his failure in contrast to your growth. When you maintain your dignity, focus on your life, and refuse to lower your standards to accommodate his inconsistencies, he can't escape the comparison. Ego hates seeing someone flourish while it sits stagnant, especially if that someone was once emotionally available to it. Every moment of your composure, every laugh without him, every step you take toward your own fulfillment becomes a subtle reminder of his missteps. Unlike confrontation, which can be argued away or rationalized, your peace is irrefutable evidence of what he lost by not showing up. Moreover, your peace undermines the sense of urgency that ego tries to impose. Men often believe that conflict or attention-seeking behavior will pull someone back in, that tension creates engagement, that jealousy or drama guarantees a response. When you refuse to engage, that entire mechanism collapses. You're no longer reacting to provoke, no longer chasing, no longer validating. You're simply living, thriving, and maintaining your energy. Ego is unprepared for this. It expects you to bend to the chaos it's accustomed to, and when you don't, it's forced to confront its own inadequacy and the reality of your worth. In essence, your peace is a silent yet potent weapon. It demonstrates power, self-respect, and independence in a way that confrontation never could. While he may have expected noise, chaos, or emotional bargaining, what he faces instead is calm, unwavering serenity. And that is the punishment ego cannot endure, the realization that someone he underestimated can thrive without his interference, that your happiness doesn't depend on him, and that the very control he once assumed he had is gone forever. Your peace doesn't just break patterns, it reshapes the emotional landscape entirely, leaving him to reckon with regret that words alone could never produce. Disappearing isn't running away, it's reclaiming your power, and understanding that distinction is what transforms the act from a reaction into a statement. Many people think leaving someone is about punishment or avoidance, but the truth is, when you step back, when you remove yourself from a world where your worth isn't recognized, it's not about them. It's about you. It's about choosing yourself over the constant cycle of compromise, disappointment, and emotional labor that drains you. Walking away quietly, deliberately, and without drama is an assertion of autonomy. It says, without words, that your time, energy, and presence are not commodities to be misused. And that quiet assertion carries more weight than any argument ever could. When you disappear, you shift the focus entirely. It's no longer about proving a point, winning an argument, or teaching a lesson. It's about reclaiming your life in its fullness. That's why disappearance is so powerful. It's a declaration that your happiness is non-negotiable, and that anyone unwilling or unable to meet your standards will no longer have a place in your world. It's a profound expression of self-respect, because respect for yourself always precedes how others perceive and value you. By choosing to walk away, you demonstrate that your emotional availability is a privilege, not an obligation. And this subtle but firm boundary communicates more than any conversation ever could. The act of disappearing also forces a kind of reckoning. People are often blind to what they take for granted when you're present. They assume your patience, your understanding, and your consistency are infinite resources, but the moment you withdraw, those assumptions are shattered. They are confronted with the reality that you are not theirs to keep at will, that your love, attention, and presence were never entitlements. And in facing that reality, the person left behind is compelled to reflect, often painfully, on what they did or didn't do to earn your presence. This reflection, free from your explanation or input, is where genuine regret often begins to grow, because it is unmediated by your emotions or defenses. Disappearing also allows you to protect your energy and rebuild your inner strength. Staying in a situation where your value is overlooked or your boundaries are ignored drains the very essence of who you are. Removing yourself isn't avoidance, it's replenishment. It's about redirecting your focus, attention, and emotional energy toward yourself and toward relationships and opportunities that honor you. In doing so, you not only regain your power, but you elevate yourself to a state where you no longer need validation from someone who failed to recognize your worth. That elevation itself is a powerful signal. The person who once underestimated you now sees, if only indirectly, the magnitude of what they lost. Furthermore, reclaiming your power through disappearance transforms the dynamic of influence. When someone is constantly available, it allows them to take for granted the generosity of your presence. When you become unreachable, you reverse that dynamic. Your absence creates curiosity, uncertainty, and reflection, elements that force the other person to confront the consequences of their own choices without you having to say a single word. That confrontation is far more potent than any confrontation driven by anger or confrontation-driven explanations. By removing yourself entirely, you place the responsibility for realization squarely on their shoulders, while simultaneously protecting your peace. Disappearing is an act of empowerment because it is intentional, controlled, and self-directed. It is not reactive, it is not emotional theater, and it is not designed to manipulate. Instead, it is a conscious choice to reclaim your dignity, assert your boundaries, and prioritize your growth. It signals that you are no longer dependent on the validation or recognition of someone who failed to value you. And in making that choice, you create a lasting impact. While you move forward, thriving in your life, the other person is left to reckon with the absence they never anticipated, and the regret that naturally follows becomes the echo of the power you quietly reclaimed. His regret lasts because you became unreachable, and that unreachability is far more powerful than any confrontation or argument could ever be. People often underestimate the impact of simply removing themselves from someone's orbit. It's not about punishing, manipulating, or forcing a reaction. It's about creating a reality where your presence is no longer an option, and in that absence, the full weight of what was lost becomes undeniable. When a man realizes that he cannot reach you, cannot call you, cannot text you, cannot provoke a reaction, or even expect your forgiveness, the illusion of control he once believed he had is shattered. That shattering is what breeds true regret, because it forces him to confront a truth he cannot change. You are no longer accessible, and what he lost is permanent. Unreachability works because it removes the comfort of certainty. When he knew you were available, He could procrastinate, make excuses, or dismiss your needs without immediate consequence. The availability of your presence acted like a safety net for his ego, allowing him to operate without accountability. But once you are gone, that safety net disappears. He no longer has a fallback, no longer has the reassurance that you will always be there to pick up the emotional pieces. That absence forces reflection, because now every choice he made can no longer be rationalized with the thought that you'll stick around regardless. The permanence of your unavailability crystallizes the consequences of his behavior in a way that arguments or explanations never could. When someone becomes unreachable, it also amplifies the sense of loss. Humans are wired to value what is scarce, what is difficult to obtain, what they can't control. By stepping out of reach, you naturally elevate your worth in his mind, because scarcity forces focus. The more he realizes that he cannot access the warmth, support, attention, or companionship he once took for granted, the more he begins to measure that loss. Every memory of your presence, every moment he didn't appreciate, every opportunity he ignored starts to weigh heavily. He begins to see the gap you left, and that gap becomes a source of constant, gnawing regret. Unreachability also prevents him from regaining access too easily. If you remained partially available, even in small ways, he might think he can rectify the past with minimal effort. But when you are fully unreachable, there is no shortcut. There is no half-hearted apology, no sporadic effort, no temporary charm that can undo the consequences. He is forced to face the reality that what he lost was consistent, reliable, and irreplaceable, and once it's gone, it cannot simply be reclaimed. That realization embeds itself deeply because it's irrefutable. He cannot argue, manipulate, or negotiate to undo it. The permanence of your absence is the teacher, and the lesson is delivered without drama, but with absolute clarity. Your unreachability also signals that your life is moving forward independently of him. It's not just that he cannot contact you, it's that he can see you thriving, evolving, and choosing yourself without him. That visibility of your growth contrasts sharply with his own inertia, magnifying the sense of loss. He doesn't just regret losing access to you. He regrets not stepping up, not showing up, and not valuing you when he had the chance. Watching you live fully while being inaccessible emphasizes the consequences of his actions in real time, making the regret not theoretical but visceral. Ultimately, his regret persists because unreachability is more than absence. It's an unspoken message that you are no longer negotiable, no longer available, no longer dependent on his recognition. It's the manifestation of your self-respect, boundaries, and independence. While he may ruminate, wish, or reflect endlessly, the fact remains. He cannot reach you anymore, and that truth becomes the foundation of his lasting regret. Your unreachability is the echo of your power, and in that echo, he is left to reckon with everything he failed to appreciate while he still could. The truth is, disappearing from his world isn't about hurting him, it's about honoring yourself. When you step away with dignity, silence, and peace, you reclaim your power, protect your energy, and show that your worth is non-negotiable. And in that quiet strength, while you continue to rise, he is left to face the regret of what he lost, a regret that words could never create, but your absence unmistakably does.